So, Matthew chapter 2, beginning at verse 1, says this. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. And about that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." And King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they said. "For this is what the prophet wrote, 'And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you, who will be the shepherd for my people Israel.' And then Herod called for a private meeting. This is important, don't miss this. With the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. And then he told them, 'Go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child, and when you find him, come back and tell me so that I can go and worship him too.' And after this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. And they entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. And then they opened their treasure chest and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. No Legos or casseroles. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. And after the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. 'Get up, flee to Egypt for the child, with the child and his mother.' The angel said, 'Stay there until I tell you to return, because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him.' And that night, Joseph left for Egypt with the child and Mary his mother. And they stayed there until Herod's death. And this fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophet, 'I called my son out of Egypt.' Herod was furious when he realized that the wise men had outwitted him, and he sent soldiers to kill all the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, based on the wise men's report of the star's first appearance." So if you're a note taker today, I would encourage you to pull them out. There's some notes that I hope that you will be an active listener. Last week I sat there and I took a ton of notes in Pastor Deanne's message, and I've referenced those notes several times this week. I've prayed through a couple of things based on those notes, and it was a reminder to me of what being an engaged listener, and actually not just hearing a sermon, but writing some things down that the Spirit brings to my attention, and then reflecting on those in the week just makes a difference. It makes a difference in my life, and I hope today it'll make a difference in your life. Lots of Spirit in Acts 2:9. It says this, verse 9, "Here we are, Parthians," it led with Parthians, "Medes and Elamites and people from Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and the province of Asia." And they were saying, and yet we can all hear people in our own languages. It was through the gift of the Spirit. And so the Parthians knew about this anticipation of a Messiah. They knew that there was a king that would come who would be one that was everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He would be the shepherd that would rule with justice and would rule with righteousness. And he would bring light into a really dark world. And they had experienced a lot of that darkness. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. And I wonder, well, how did they know all this? How did they have all of this information? And again, the reason that most scholars would say that they probably came from the Parthian Empire, which was formerly Babylon and Persia, was because in Daniel chapter 2, verse 48, we're told that Daniel was appointed as the chief wise man. It says this in Daniel 2:48, "Then the king appointed Daniel to a high position and gave him many valuable gifts, and he made Daniel ruler over the whole province of Babylon, as well as chief over all his wise men." So Lots of interesting thoughts on who they were. But then there's a ton of questions about what did they see? What was it that led them? And depending on what you read, and we could spend a lot of time talking about, was it planets that were merging? Was it, what exactly happened in the heavens that caused them to know that a newborn king had arisen? But what's interesting is in the Divine Comedy, Dante says this. He describes God as the love that moves the stars. And what's interesting is that in this story we discover that God is determined to be found. And if you're willing to pay attention, He will move the heavens to lead you to Him. And we say this all the time: before you ever start looking for God, God's looking for you. Before you ever start searching for Jesus, Jesus is searching for you. And one of the things that we discover at Christmas is the lengths and the measures that God will go to draw people who are at least paying attention to His presence. And so I love this quote from St. Augustine. He says this: Christ was not born because the star shone forth, but it shone forth because Christ was born. We should say not that the star was fate for Christ, but that Christ was fate for the star. In other words, it was because Jesus came into the world that God put everything into place in the heavens so that certain people who were paying attention would be drawn and they would experience His goodness and His grace. And I would just maybe ask you to reflect on the things that God did in your life that led you to Jesus for the first time. If you've been following Jesus for a long time, what were those things? What were those things that God began to move the heavens in your life to draw you to Him? And if you haven't stepped over that line, if you haven't yet said, I want to make Jesus Lord of my life, what are the things that He's doing even now to draw you and to move you and to lead you into His presence? And so the star tells of this amazing story of light coming into the world and the journey that these wise men took to experience that light. And so there's so much more to this story than the wise men showing up with a baby gift and using the star as a divine GPS, right? That's kind of how we think of this. It's baby gift and divine GPS. It's really a story about their journey, about their search, about their longing for something more. And so in order to help us understand that a little bit more, we need to know more about this Parthian Empire, because my hunch is you're not really savvy on the Parthian Empire. I mean, I don't know, maybe one of you out here is like an expert in the Parthian Empire. If so, fact check me later. But just for some information that I think would help us about why they were willing to take this journey, why they were willing to do this, here's a map. I want to show you this map of the Parthian Empire. And so Parthia was in kind of what is now modern day Iran. And I thought I had a laser pointer. I was going to use it today and it was going to be awesome. Oh, I do. Here we go. All right. So this is the area where Jesus would have been born, probably, and it just died. Right over here, charge your laser pointer. This is a good lesson in life. I'll just set that there. Anyway, in the middle of the map over here, you can see Parthia. And here's the thing. It was about a 1,000-mile journey from Parthia, which is modern-day Iran, to Bethlehem. Just to give us some frame of reference, that would take, on a camel journey, if they were on camels, it was about a 50-day journey. Just for reference for us, if you were to hop on a camel from our parking lot, you would have to journey to the Empire State Building in New York City, which according to Google Maps is 1,103 miles. Now, for those of you New Yorkers in the room, and you have driven that drive, just imagine doing that on camel. It's a long journey. It's a dangerous journey, especially when you have very valuable gifts that you're bringing. What would cause them to take this kind of journey? Why would they do this? And again, it helps us to know some of what was going on in the Parthian Empire at this time. When Jesus was born, in the Parthian Empire, there was a guy named Phraates IV who was ruling. I got a picture of Phraates because Phraates would put his picture on all the coins of that time and that day. Phraates became emperor when he killed his own father and took his throne. His father had a whole bunch of wives, and he had 30 brothers. He immediately rounded up all 30 of his brothers and had them all executed. He had 5 sons himself, and because he knew what he had just done to his father, he then shipped his 5 sons off to the Romans because they were the arch enemies of Parthia, so that they would be sold into slavery, so that they couldn't do to him what he had done to his own father. He was a dictator. He ruled with ruthlessness. He was a terrible, terrible leader. And in the Parthian Empire, this was the kind of oppression and darkness that they were under. And they had this knowledge. It had been passed down potentially from Daniel that there was one day going to be a king, and this king would rule with righteousness and justice and would bring light and hope, and that somehow the world could be better than the darkness that they had experienced. And they leaned in on this. And I just think this is the reason why we lean in at Christmas. Because we look around and we say, there's a whole lot of junk going on in the world, and who's going to make this right, and what hope is there? And we're reminded at Christmas that Jesus is that hope. We're reminded at Christmas that one day Jesus will return. And just as surely as people waited for his first coming as a baby and hoped on that, we long for his return. And we long that one day when he returns, he'll set all wrongs right. And he'll bring justice and mercy and somehow make sense of the pain that we have gone through and the pain that we've faced. And so in your notes, I would just encourage you to write this down. Sometimes we are the ones who are in darkness and need light and hope. Sometimes that's us. Sometimes we're the ones who just need to know that all of this stuff and brokenness and pain will someday make sense, and that God will make it right, and all the wrongs and all the injustices will be set right. And I don't know if you're here today or you're watching online and you're just looking at your life, and even in this season you're just seeing a mess, and you're wondering what hope is there. Can God forgive? Can God restore? Can God do something that seems just too big for him to do? And the answer at Christmas is yes. He can do all that and so much more. And we see this story unfolding of these people that were just looking for some kind of hope in the midst of a really dark time. And they found it in Jesus because they were paying attention, because they were willing to look for the signs. And I think sometimes we look around and we go, like, where is God? And I would just say, well, if you'll just pay attention and you'll just look for the way God is moving and leading and directing, you'll begin to see him in so many places. And so if you're here today and you're one of those people, if you're watching online and you're one of those people who you're just looking for some hope, you're just looking for something to make sense of the mess, and can God set some things right that just don't seem possible to be made right, you just need to know the answer is yes, he can. And the answers are found in Jesus, and in doing what these wise men did, searching for Jesus, knowing that long before you start that search, he's searching for you. But then sometimes in your notes, you can write this down, sometimes we're meant to be the light that leads others to Jesus. So sometimes we're those people who are in the darkness. We're the ones that need the hope. We're the ones that are looking for hope. But sometimes we're the people that are meant to be that light. We're the people that are meant to be leading others towards that hope.